Well, hello and welcome. My name is Danielle Borelli. I'm the Graduate Student Association President, Master in Public Policy candidate, and intern for the Digital Transformation Hub. And it is my honor to introduce President Armstrong and Teresa Carlson, Vice President of Worldwide Public Sector, Amazon Web Services, for our first ever Fireside Chat. Teresa leads the AWS Worldwide Public Sector business, which accounts for 2,300 government, 7,000 education, and 22,000 nonprofit customers. She also advises Amazon Public Policy on global policy issues. Teresa dedicates her time to philanthropic and leadership roles to support the global community, including the American Red Cross and the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She has received many honors over her career, including being named one of Business Insider's most important people in cloud computing and receiving the 2016 Ellis Island Medal of Honor. And she was just recently named one of the most powerful women in Washington, D.C. It is an absolute privilege to host Teresa here today and to hear about how women in business technology, diversity in the workplace, and her own personal experience in being a successful technology and business leader. However, before we proceed, I do have to cover some house rules. Today's event is a discussion followed by Q&A from the audience. There will be a wireless microphone passed around, so just raise your hand as you have a question, and a moderator will come to you. Please do not crowd the front or line up. Just wait for the microphone to come to you. In addition, there are 2 main exits in the back, as well as bathrooms in the lobby. Out of respect for the speakers, please limit your photography, as well as loud and distracting noises or reactions. And lastly, this event will be filmed and the recording made available at a later date. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming President Armstrong and Teresa Carlson.
Well, thank you, everyone, and welcome to Cal Poly, Teresa.
Thank you. It's a beautiful campus. Wow, and a beautiful day.
Well, we're delighted to see everyone here. What a great way to spend your UU hour or take a break from work if you're a faculty or staff member. Cal Poly has been embarking on an effort to enhance our ability in technology, our technology, our data center, many things that have helped us move along in the past getting old. So our partnership with AWS, moving to the cloud, all in with AWS, is really a way that we can leapfrog and really stay relevant and learn by doing forward. So we're delighted to have this discussion today with Teresa. I also have to give you a little bit of background. You may detect that we have a little bit of a similar accent, and it may come out more and more as we move along. But who could imagine that you would have 2 people both growing up in Western Kentucky, one leading an amazing cloud-based company in the public sector and dream job, and then a president of Cal Poly, another dream job. So students in the crowd, anything's possible.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
definitely.
It's amazing. So Teresa, tell everybody what you do. I think they'd like to know, what do you do on a day-to-day basis, and what takes you around the world and around the United States?
Well, let me begin by saying I'm really honored to be here, and thank you so much, and I appreciate you all taking your hour because I know it's always precious to have a little downtime, so thank you for coming. So yeah, I run the business unit called Worldwide Public Sector for Amazon Web Services, and I actually started it 7 years ago, and prior to that, I was 10 years, I was at Microsoft, and I ran U.S. federal government. And my job is great. I love my job because I get to go around the world. I started with U.S. government, but I get to go around the world and work with great universities like Cal Poly, government customers, education of all types, not-for-profits, and NGOs. And the thing that we do, Amazon has amazing leadership principles. I love Jeff, to me, the leadership principles he set when he started the company are things that are easy to embrace and understand and get behind, like dive deep, deliver results, high ownership, backbone, disagree and commit, things that you can really get behind. But in the public sector business globally, we have 2 additional things that we talk about, which is paving the way for disruptive innovation and making the world a better place. And the people that we hire and our customers that we work with have this desire to do that. So it's not only about business, it's also about doing things that really do make the world a better place. And we're striving to do that. So, getting to do things like go into countries and really get them to understand a digital transformation model. Even what you were just talking about here, which is getting Cal Poly to really think through learning by doing, new skills that they really need here for students that are going to take you into the next generation. And really, it's already here. But what do you need? How do you really stay current? And technology, is not a panacea for everything, but it is really driving the economy in such a big way. And everything we do every day, that you really need to have those kind of skills. So my job is like, it's tiring sometimes, because we started literally with no revenue, no customers. And today we have customers in 152 countries in my business, more like over 190 countries in commercial. And then I have people in like 24 countries now. So some days I'm like, okay, whack-a-mole, like where should I be and where should I put my focus? And that can be challenging, but it's also just super invigorating.
Well, that's amazing, the breadth and depth of what you do, and I like the whack-a-mole analogy. We all do that sometimes, don't we? I see some people nodding. We had some great interactions with Amazon San Luis Obispo this morning. We had some really good discussions and questions with students that are junior developers in their program and alumni there at Amazon downtown. And when we opened the mic up, diversity came up, and that's certainly a topic that we want to cover today. But Teresa, you've been very successful, and you've been a very successful woman. What are some of the things that have really advice that you would give to individuals? I think that's a good place to start as we talk about diversity and unpeel the onion and get more and more questions going. But what's worked for you?
Well, it's interesting because I think maybe because of where we're from, I didn't know what I didn't know. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, I'll say, because sometimes having no fear is a good thing. And we talked a little bit this morning about grit. I'm not an Ivy Leaguer. I went to State University. I went to Eastern Kentucky University and Western Kentucky University. I have an undergraduate and a master's degree in speech and language pathology, and then got into tech almost 20 years ago now. And so I changed careers. I'm a little bit of a different beast, but that's the reason I think loving what you do and have a passion and grit and not almost sometimes not knowing is a good thing because you just have grit and you're saying, I want to do this and I'm going to move forward. But I would tell you in the tech world, it is more challenging because we do have a lack of diversity. We do have a lack of females, which in the early days is one of the big things I started with at AWS, trying to do a program mainly targeted toward young girls to get them excited about technology and STEM. And just, understanding that, hey, why would a young girl get excited? I knew nothing about technology at all. And, making them understand that through technology, there's lots of jobs also besides coding and engineering jobs, but also business jobs, PR, sales. And I shared today, it's not for the faint of heart because you still have to be very technical, very smart and business savvy about the technology to do any of these roles. So there's really tons of roles, and I have lots of technical people. I'm pretty technical today, but in the early days, I used to tell them I was a paper pusher in my first tech job. I'm like, now I'm going to be a paper automator. But I think, having a sense of where you want to be as a female, I'll talk about sort of from my perspective. One of the things I did early at Microsoft that I think is very good, and I would encourage everybody to do this, is to plot out where you want to go with your career. It was the first time I just literally did believe if I did a really good job. My father used to say, a hard day's work earns you a good day's pay. And if you do every job that you have at your very best, with your very best attitude, then you're going to do great. And he would never let us complain. I have an older brother and sister, and we'd have to get up, and he would never, ever let us complain about going to work. And I honestly, my dad passed 7 years ago, my mom's still living. I never, ever heard them complain about going to work. They were both teachers, by the way. My dad was a high school basketball coach, and both my parents were teachers. And my mom, who's 88, still has this amazing love of education that I think about today her getting up and bouncing off to school, and she became a principal and then assistant superintendent of curriculum. And up until about 4 years ago, she literally still would observe and do surveys on 20 new teachers a year that the university hired her to do. And that's a love. So I think, part of it, I did have a really good example. But chart your course. Microsoft had me at one point, which was one of the best things I ever did. I would tell my manager, here's what I want to do. I was always very vocal. I've never been shy, which is probably a good thing, but I was very vocal about what I wanted to do in my career. But one thing Microsoft made me do as an executive was chart out and write down what I wanted. And it was the first time, I think, ever I had thought about what do I want to do? And I remember I wrote that I wanted to be a general manager of a business. I wanted to run one of their larger businesses. And I 2 steps later, I actually did that. And then I ran all the business in U.S. Federal. And I couldn't believe I'd done that. I mean, but I sort of then followed what I said I was going to do. But it gave me some idea of the steps I needed to take. And I also spent a lot of time asking questions about, was I doing things right? And I shared today earlier that feedback is a gift, and for both the men and women, but especially women. There's been a lot of studies that say females who have done sports and on teams are used to getting feedback. And those that are not, were not often given feedback at home. They were told you can do anything, And I was told a lot of times, get up, you can do that, go pick up rocks, you misbehave kind of thing. But I think it's important to give feedback and accept feedback. And when you get feedback to be reflective, you might not always agree. A lot of times people's first thing is, I'm not doing that. But really be reflective of the feedback you're being given and adjust. I had one boss one time tell me, sometimes what's perceived as your greatest weakness can be a strength. So you also have to balance all that out with because you can't, when you get feedback, you can't over-vector toward things, but you have to adjust and learn to adjust appropriately. And also learn to be collaborative and get feedback from others, as you go into big projects or things you want to achieve. Go get feedback, because I tell people the real meeting is usually outside the meeting. Mm-hmm. Any meeting you go into is really outside the meeting, because as an executive today, I want to walk into a room and know who my allies are and who aren't, and all their things they're going to bring up as to the naysayers, and be able to answer that. You can't always prepare for all that, but you've got to prepare in the best way you can. So from a career perspective, unless you can learn a lot of that as you go along, it's going to be hard if you never take feedback and really absorb it.
Well, I think your parents, my parents were on the same playbook about optimism and working hard. And I think the aspect of your strength can be your weakness. My dad always used to tell me, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Try to use them in proportion. So you could kind of gather from that
That's a
what he
really
was
good point.
telling me what to do. Sharon's here, so she's nodding really big on that one. You've been very successful, worked at some different companies, and also at AWS. What are some of the benefits that you've seen from having that more diverse workforce? As we talked this morning, made great progress, but we talked about the university doing better and AWS. It's a journey. But
Yeah.
What are some of the benefits that you've seen, and benefits you think that are out there for more diversity?
Well, the biggest thing on diversity, people talk about the concept of having different ideas and opinions, but it really matters. It's how you get to a much better product and a better solution all around, because we don't live in a world that it's just all white males or all white females or all African Americans. We live in a diverse population of different people and groups. And you need to be able to take in different ideas and opinions. And I'll tell you, I value, my team knows, I can be pretty tough. I ask very hard questions. But I ask questions because I value the opinion and I want to get a good debate going. And I think by getting a good debate going, sometimes one of the things I'll just sort of on the side point out, I notice even today at Amazon, females don't always speak up. Like, it's interesting, If I go to have drinks with my friends or have a girls' night out or a girls' activity of any kind, we're blah, 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 blah. I mean, you can't shut us up because women speak 30,000 words a day to a man's like 10,000 or 7,000. It's around that, and that's statistically true. But in business, it's not true. Women tend to take a back seat and say less because I think they worry their opinion or ideas won't be as valued. And you do have to prepare. You have to be, you have to bring your best ideas and be prepared to the table. But I do have a voice. And sometimes I think, some people don't like it because I do, I told my team before I started the public sector business and I had three groups I had to sell to start it. I had inside of Amazon that had never really done government business. I had my government customers, I'll start with government. I had government customers who didn't believe in cloud, that thought it was not secure and said they would never, nobody will ever buy this. And then we had like the large integrator communities like Lockheed and Northrop who owned a lot of these contracts. So it was a lot. I mean, there were days like on things I got exhausted, but I think being even here at Amazon has made me stronger in voice and ideas and knowing some days even when my stomach got nauseous and I was a little like, oh, got to go into this meeting and really sell this thing with all the facts. It made me stronger and bolder because I knew my team depended on me, my customers depended on me, my partners depended on me, and I was the leader of this group. So what I tell a lot of women, the diversity side of this is your ideas and opinion matters because you bring a different thought to this. And even with different men around the table, it's about different thoughts and views. And it's, I talked about a leadership principle, be right a lot. Jeff talks about this, and it took me a while to understand what the leadership principle, be right a lot, meant. And it means be right until you're not. And so as an example, if you go maybe here at the university, you have a curriculum or a new degree that you started 10 years ago. And you said that back then it was great. But now you're looking at it saying, that's not really relevant anymore. So you're going to change that. But be smart enough to know when you need to change. And that change could be in 3 weeks or 2 months or 2 years or 10 years. But the reason it's important to have a diversity of thought and ideas is because you need different people giving you that feedback openly and honestly and respectfully. So diversity just is, it really makes a better business, and there's all kinds of statistics out there that tell you companies are more successful when they have diverse workforces and boards. And, we're still learning, I think, as how to embrace that more because the old boys network is still alive and kicking. But diversity is important, and we all need to do more to make sure that we're making that happen.
Well, thank you. We've got several students today with us. Thank you for being here, and especially what you were talking about. Drill down a little bit. What advice? We can't do it, but if you could talk to every one of our students today, particularly our women students, what advice would you give them? Their first year, second year, third year, what advice would you give them? What should they be doing?
Well, the one thing I would tell you as females, we don't talk about this a lot, but one is support each other. I still see a lot of mean girl behavior happen, which I don't like. I don't adhere to that at all. And I think as women, you need to be honest with each other and support women together, because the only way, you've got to move up in a world where there's men and there's women. But as women, we need to get together and have real conversations with each other about what's working and not. And don't spend your time talking about everything that doesn't work. Spend time talking about things that do work. It's funny, I was just at MIT for 2 days, and I went to dinner with Tim O'Reilly, who just launched a new book, WTF kind of book. It's very good. But we were talking about how a lot of the Silicon Valley executives have these events. They bring together all these guys at these events, these fireside events. And I said, why aren't women doing that? So I guess my point is come together, support each other, and ask for real open and honest feedback. Don't get together and have sessions where you talk about everything that's broken. There's nothing I hate worse than seeing women's panels where they just talk about everything that's not working. Figure out things. We're way beyond that, I think. We should be talking about how we come together, how we build businesses, how we support each other, how we work together. And if you see someone that is sort of off the reservation, work with them to get back on the reservation in business. Because a lot of times what will happen is they'll just say, oh, so-and-so's not doing what they should be doing. Come together, have an honest dialogue, and do that. So that's one. The second one is when you get a seat at the table, take it. I often see women, they'll say, how do I get a seat? What do I do to get a seat at the table? Well, take that seat. Be aggressive and bold and have ideas. And for the men in the room, I would say if you are a manager and you have women, if you have 15 men and 3 women, which is not uncommon at all, make sure that you take the opportunity, if you see that the female is not voicing, but you think she has an idea, say, hey, Teresa, what do you think about this? I'd like to hear your opinion. Make sure, and I like to do that with all my team. Like I will find a lot of my men and I'm like, Andrew knows. I say, Andrew, what do you think? I always ask my team, I want to hear what they think, but when I ask them, I expect for an open and honest and data-driven kind of, conversation to ensue. But take a seat at the table. Don't be afraid to have a voice. And if you get I see sometimes women will, we have a culture at Amazon, people expect crisp, clear communications. They don't like it when you sort of ramble on, and I'll see sometimes people get on a female and say, be clear, I don't understand what you're saying. And I see it bothers them, and I would say just practice. It's like everything else. You have to build muscles. You build new muscles every day, and if you feel like you don't have a muscle, don't be afraid to say, I'm not really great at that. How do I build that muscle up? And spend some time practicing. I shared with President Armstrong, my accent really bothered me. I mean, in the early days of doing business, you can't imagine, I was really self-conscious about my accent, and I never was really, where I was brought up, it didn't bother, of course, it's what I knew. And I would people say, I don't understand you, or what'd you say? And I would have to, be a little clearer with my accent. And today what I found is, you have to embrace the gifts you have. And when I go around the world, I've actually found it to be a huge asset, business asset over time, because it's more, people look at it as more, trusting, I guess. They like the accent. They don't take it as anything, but I used to think people would think I'm not smart, or I'm from an area that they wouldn't think I was as accomplished as I should be as someone with a different accent. So there's things that you always, I think, are a little conscious about, and you have to just talk to yourself a little bit and figure out how you embrace it and take advantage of it in a new way.
Oh, as we talked, I went through the same types of things. I remember moving from Western Kentucky and then starting grad school in North Carolina State. That was suddenly in a big city and a big university, so I can relate to that. Talking about support, we've got some wonderful, I won't mention them all, we've got some wonderful programs that support a range of minority students, but especially in our women's area, Society of Women Engineers, Women in Software and Hardware, and then we also have just a couple of years old, Women in Business. So there's lots of other programs, lots of other support of our Hispanic engineers and others, and I know on many occasions that support has been the difference of a student continuing and finishing the degree. So that was a point our provost, Kathleen Insfinken, made this morning when we were downtown talking about supporting one another. And that cuts across everything, every barrier. She made the point of, see someone that looks like they're having a tough time, take the time to say something. So that's what we call the Mustang way, right? Pride, character, responsibility. Teresa, earlier you mentioned, back to another comment you made, of some of the things that you've been involved with, but what are some of the other programs at AWS or other successful programs that you've seen that are enhance diversity or get women more involved in STEM? Because that is such a big topic to get more diversity, more underrepresented groups, as well as more women in the technology, because there's such a need and demand for jobs.
Well, we've tried to do a variety of things, and I think we're still trying to learn and adjust as to what are the right kind of programs, and there has to be a variety. And it's interesting because in the very early days of me starting here, we really didn't have programs at AWS, and I started something with some women in U.S. government called #SmartIsBeautiful. And we aren't really using that today, but I'll tell you, it was geared toward young girls, that if you've noticed, so many young girls will spend 45 minutes trying to get the right selfie versus figuring out what's the coursework they're going to take. And we're trying to sort of gear this toward smart is beautiful. Your mind is beautiful. But a lot of the women who were coders, the hard coders, like, I don't like the word beautiful in any of this. I was like, okay, fine. So we sort of rejiggered, and we came up with something called We Power Tech. And We Power Tech is much more about inclusion and diversity overall. And we've been doing these programs, we started in the U.S., and we've been doing these programs all around the U.S. to bring people together and sort of do programming, talk to them about AWS, what we offer, programs they can get involved with, why careers in technology is important. We do code-a-thons on campuses. We're trying to encourage and sponsor coding groups for women on campuses. For me, one of the things I do, because I'm more external, we're doing a lot internal at Amazon because my world is mainly outside versus inside. I'm more externally facing. Anytime I go into countries, I work with the embassies, and I work with my partners, and I have them gather the most influential women in that country or that area. And I do sort of town hall, I'll do lunches or dinners, and we'll put the women together, and we talk about what we can do as a group to try to encourage more women to get into STEM and technology careers. And then what's happened is they've continued, and both my team on the ground and the great partners I have in the embassies are helping us sort of continue these programs. But I will just share, what we do here in the U.S. is like really uncommon, how we have these kind of programs. I've been in places in Latin America and Asia and all, women never come together and have sessions. So the first one I had in Latin America, it went on for like 4 hours because the women never got a chance to talk ever. So I said, I was trying to manage it and said, give us your name, the job role you do, and what you'd like to get us. And they just went on and talked. And I realized they don't do this. And most of them said, I've never been to a session like this where women come together. So, but we do women in technology events. And I'd like to get to the point where, you know, it's not necessary to do all this, but it's just we're all coming together. It'd be great if we could do more where we're just having events where we're saying, hey, we're already diverse together and we're moving in the right direction, but I think, unfortunately, we're ways from that.
Well, I was, of course, taking every opportunity to brag about Cal Poly with Teresa today. I pointed out how many students participated in our career fairs. Recently had 3. We had over 250 companies. We had 3,700 career opportunities, jobs on the street for our students, and about that many internships. So that was quite amazing. And I would say also to our students, we have a wonderful career services office here, and that puts on the career fair, but they also do a lot more. And what we're also seeing, some great examples from Amazon San Luis Obispo downtown, some of the programs and some of the more diverse employees or student interns that are there because of some programs they participated in. So there's lots of opportunities, and don't be afraid to ask, and also help us understand how we could do better. I think we're at a point now that perhaps we can see if we have questions from the crowd.
As we're doing that, I will say I love this junior developer program. I think what we're doing with Cal Poly is really unique, and I'd love to scale it a lot more. It was fantastic. The nice thing today on the diversity was hearing there was a couple of women that talked about, even though if you're in a smaller area, that they've taken advantage of Amazon's like MazeCon, other things that are video streaming. So even though you can't be sitting right there, you can stream it and participate or go back. And I think those kind of things are important, that you have things that you can sort of rewind and go back and participate when you can, based on our work schedule.
And we had some good discussions as well, and some very open comments about the LBGT community and how we need to embrace and do more. So while we focused a bit on women, there's a wide range of things that we're doing at Cal Poly, wide range of things that are going on at AWS, because it's important. Learn by doing can't really work well if you're not working with a group of people that really reflect what the world's going to be like.
Yeah,
So
100%.
the students talked about need to get to the real world, and that's real world. So, Danielle, we have some questions.
Well, thank you so much
Do
for the
you have a
discussion.
question, Danielle?
I do have a question. I can start off if you want me to.
Yeah.
Teresa, for particularly women who are graduating soon, what advice can you give them for success in a technology and or policy field?
You know, if you're graduating soon, I would say on the policy side of things, it's pretty exciting. There's lots of new things in the policy world because what's happening in tech policy today, everywhere in the U.S. and around the world, is states, local, countries. They're really now starting to look at things like security, privacy. How do they think about it? When I was just at MIT, this was like a big thing that they were talking about there, like with artificial intelligence and IoT. So there's lots of new kinds of technologies that are happening, you know, drone technology, that policy is playing a big role. When we go into countries, that's the one thing we have to talk to them about, new policies that are happening. So it's a really sort of, I think, fun and exciting place for tech policy, which a lot of people don't understand or embrace. So you have to both know technology and understand how governments work and pass things and how you lobby and go in and really influence, which I actually spend probably about 20% of my time doing that kind of work as well. If you're graduating right now, also, there's tons of, I love the cybersecurity. There's so many positions and openings now in cybersecurity. And just that field alone, embracing that and looking for the opportunities. But also for us, I would tell you, just in field work for worldwide public sector, we have thousands of jobs that we're opening up hundreds, and by the middle of next year, we'll have thousands open for areas like solution architects at all levels, business people, salespeople, marketing people. We have SDEs in our org for doing things. We have classified work. We built the intelligence community cloud. So if you like the intelligence work, defense work, there's all kinds of positions and roles. So if you're interested, let me know. Andrew can wave his hand at my team. Anybody who's interested, let me know.
And I would just remind you of Teresa's background. She didn't start out in tech, but she moved into tech. And then all the different opportunities. And that's why we're very proud at Cal Poly. Across our 6 colleges, we have great opportunities and students are engaged. We have one of the world's experts on the ethics of artificial intelligence.
I love that.
Just amazing. And so it's a very exciting time. Earlier this summer, I attended an AWS meeting and talking about federal government. And you'll love the Cal Poly connection here. I met the CIO of the CIA, a customer, and we had a very good discussion, and I mentioned a Cal Poly graduate by the name of John Monet, who some of you know from QL+, and he goes, "Oh, I worked for him years ago." So instant Cal Poly connection, and it's, I think,
And
pretty...
he's from Kentucky now. John Edwards.
John Edwards is from
Who's the
Kentucky
CIO of
as
the
well.
CIA. See, we
So
breed some really good folk.
We had the Kentucky Mafia going.
Yeah, we did. It was really
in
funny.
the green room there for a little bit. So, another question or other questions from the
Are there
group?
any questions from the audience?
Don't be shy.
Yes.
We go.
Oh, the mic will come to you.
Please identify yourself too. We'd love to know who
Yeah.
you are.
I'm John Wadehofer, and my question is,
Tell me what program you're in. Do you care?
business administration.
Okay.
And I was wondering how you made that switch from what you studied in school to technology.
Well, I'll do this really quickly. So healthcare, I was actually very successful in healthcare. I was a therapist, and then I helped start a healthcare consulting group for a company called NovaCare Corporation, who was the largest contract provider of rehab in the world at the time. But there was something called prospective payment that happened in the mid-'90s, which capped healthcare rehabilitation. So if you were a stroke patient or a head injury, you would get so many. You could just get any number of visits as a therapist, and then they capped it for case management and said you get 5 visits, and then you have to recertify. And this imploded almost overnight, this business model. And they ended up selling off. Novacare was a great company, by the way. They just didn't have a plan B, I call it. In business, you learn you always need a plan B and a plan C if something happens. So they sold off all their divisions, and they sold my consulting. I was then helping to run a consulting group to a group that was not very good. And we had been very customer obsessed, just like Amazon. I've always been at companies, I think, that are customer obsessed. And I went and I just said to myself one day, I don't like this. Healthcare, it's like Groundhog Day. I wake up every day's the same. They're not changing it. I really was tired. I was really like mentally and physically tired of healthcare at the time. I didn't know what I was going to do. I rewrote my resume, and it was just a fluke, but a friend of mine called another friend and asked him if he was interested in coming to this little tech company in New Hampshire. And he said, no, I'm happy, but he goes, Teresa Carlson is, she wants to change careers. And he said, well, I know her, she's a therapist. And he said, well, no, she runs a business. So long story, the CEO of this little tech company in Nashua, New Hampshire, is about $85 million in revenue, called me. We chatted. He asked me to come to New Hampshire. I went, flew up on a Sunday, had dinner with him, met the team on Monday. He offered me a job, literally. And he offered me a job, and I said, again, I'm a paper pusher, not a paper automator. They did workflow and document management. But very quickly, it did not, I started off sort of trying to help them with their healthcare business, but I quickly became their SVP of marketing and business development and loved it. Andrew worked for me through an acquisition there, actually. So see, connections matter. Remember that? That's another thing I should have told you. Connections really matter. Keep up your network. But it felt like a glove that fit me. I'll just share this. I woke up and I was like, technology, where have you been all my life? I mean, I was like, oh my gosh. And I will share something. I do not look at technology today as technology. I look at it as a business and mission enabler. And I think that's partly been one of my secrets to business, is I go into it with looking at what's the problem Cal Poly has and how do I help solve it with technology. Not technology's a panacea. So I did it I literally, through a fluke. It was really, and I've had a very successful career, but speech and language pathology is it's a great program, and it prepared me for, I'll call normal and abnormal communications, which help you sort of in everything you do.
No, it's exciting because some of what she's been involved with and what AWS is doing is going to be highlighted this afternoon. So if any of you would like to come at 4:30 this afternoon, we're launching the Digital Transformation Hub, the Cal Poly Digital Transformation Hub powered by AWS.
Yeah.
It's the only partnership of its kind between a university and AWS in the world.
Yep.
And it's going to be a place where our students, our faculty, staff, other governmental or education entities can go and with a problem and get it solved using the power of the cloud. So it's a really significant partnership with significant contribution from AWS, and it fits Learn by Doing. It really fits Learn by Doing. So be on the lookout for that, students, faculty, and staff.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, I work here at Cal Poly working with diversity and inclusion initiatives within engineering, and I have a background in psychology and STEM equity.
Yeah.
So I know that you mentioned before when you have faced bias or sexism that you've kind of used your own grit or your own positive mentality to get past it, but I guess I'm just curious, have you run into things that are more structural inequality, so like the way the system is run that people just don't really think of, that you've had to kind of intervene and kind of change the institution itself?
Well, I would say for myself, in the way I've run my business, what I started trying to do is, you need data around things. Data is just so important. And what I've found over the years is, things begin to just sort of go off course because nobody's looking at the actual data of what's happening. And so when I was able to finally sort of get my data at Amazon, and same when I was at Microsoft, you can act on data, if that makes sense. So now I understand how many females I have, what's the diversity in general I have. And my team and I take steps, mechanisms. We put mechanisms in place now for that. So I would say that's one of the most important things because, you have your human element of the way that you work and operate. And then you also have to make people, the other mechanisms are those training and education, so sort of constantly putting the data in front of people. Where are you? What is the survey sort of saying? Giving people that constant feedback because change happens over time with lots of, for people, they learn in different ways. I always say with adult learning, once, twice, 3 times, maybe you get it. And so that happens for different people in different ways. So auditory, visual. So you have to, provide that to people in all different ways. And for us, I think that's what we're trying to do. One is we're looking at the data. 2, we're providing that feedback to the teams in different ways. 3, we're putting mechanisms in place that the teams can look at their own and ask for feedback through programs we have like Connections. And then, looking at things like as an example, there was an individual, a diversity candidate that we hired out of the UK, and I met with him, and he's Canadian by background, really liked him, and I was sort of the last person to meet with him, and we had a great conversation. And I said, hey, if this works out, I'd really like to get you involved more in my diversity program, get your feedback, like what we could be doing better. And he said, I'm so glad you asked me that. He said, do you know that you're the only female even I've had in my loop? And it was like, that was data and it was feedback for me. So I immediately went back to my team and said, we need to do better. Like, we've got to make sure when we're doing loops for candidates that we have a diversity loop, like we have men, we have women, people of color, LGBT, like we just need we need to be more conscious, and sometimes people are moving so fast. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, but I think it's a combination of kind of things, and it's not going to be, you got to keep it going and learn what's working and adjust. Again, be right till you're not kind of thing, learn and then adjust when you're not.
I think that's a really great question. Just a real quick snippet from a Cal Poly perspective. We've learned, and we have a structural barrier at Cal Poly for diversity. And it's because over the years we've built our on-campus fees, and we don't have the same strong financial aid package for our campus fees that we have for the tuition. And so we have learned that that was a barrier. We also learned that early decision was a barrier. We dropped early decision. It made a difference. But all of those were data-driven. And so it's really a great point you made. I believe there was another question,
Oh, yeah.
Danielle?
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm a Cal Poly grad, and now I work in the library IT department here. I had a question about, you talked about during your time at Microsoft that you were solicited for what your goals were, and I thought that was really great. And I want to know if you still set these goals and how you work towards them, and maybe any advice you might have for someone like me who wants to work on communicating my goals to my supervisor.
I do still set goals for myself. I have customer goals, number of visits I want to make for customers. I have goals that I set for myself. It's funny you asked this question because I just was doing a reflection. I keep a journal, and I was just doing a reflection of the goals that I've achieved here at AWS since I've been here, and I need to set some new ones actually. And I was one of the big things. I've had some really big, bold things I wanted to do here, and I'm sort of shocked. But it's only because Jeff is an amazing leader and Andy Jassy, and they've allowed me to do the things I've done. But I've had big goals, and we're getting there. But there's still a lot more I want to do, and I thought I need to sit down. And generally, the way I do it is I try to do my journal 3 or 4 nights a week, just in my own quiet time, and I put my own personal goals in that journal. And then I do talk to my manager. Even my boss today, I was sharing, I told him I wanted to spend some time in Amazon Fashion. Not, I don't want to leave what I'm doing, but he was like, oh, well, we don't, And I said, no, I want to learn about another unit. And I like fashion, and I want to understand how Amazon does that. So even today, like for myself, there's things I talk about. But for you, I would tell you again, write them down, understand them, figure out, do you have a time frame for those? And I would say just, don't be shy, because most of the time I love when my people tell me what they want to accomplish. Like I'm like, great, let's talk about that. And then sometimes, if you tell other people you admire, I look for mentors, all different mentors. Like I have spiritual mentors, physical mentors, people I just admire their business skills. Like I don't, and I will just meet people that I know. I admire Jeff. I asked Jeff, I think he's a mentor of mine. And I learn things from people. And I think you can take your goals and talk to others that you admire and say, what do you think? Have I articulated this well? And sometimes you just got to dive in and have the conversation and ask honest, open-ended questions about your goals to your manager. I mean, don't skirt around it. Say, do you think I'm prepared for this? What else do you think I should be doing to prepare myself for this? Do you have ideas? And also take charge of your own career. You want to also look for opportunities of things that you think you can do, so you don't make them do the work. You come to them and say, this is something I want to accomplish, and here's 3 things I've looked at that I think could really help me get there. What do you think about this? Could you support that? So be very direct, ask open-ended, but then be direct about what you want. And don't be shy to come back around each time you have a one-on-one or a career discussion.
I had a question over here as well. Right over here. Oh. We'll go here, sorry.
Hi, Teresa. My name is Brenna Jensen, and I was actually an AWS intern, a sales associate intern last summer under the commercial inbound team.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
that's
so I'll
great.
be joining Amazon again next June. So.
Fantastic. Hope you'll come to public sector.
Thank you. So I'm curious. So I know reInvent is coming up in November. So I'm curious about some of the new innovations and product line releases that you'll have at that event, and what do you anticipate, and how can you leverage that in the public sector?
Well, I can't tell you what we're going to launch. You already know that.
Yeah.
But generally, the way that we prepare, so for those of you who don't know, reInvent is our big conference we have every year. It'll be about 43,000 people this year. We literally take over Las Vegas, and this thing has grown like crazy. The first year we had it 6 years ago, there was 5,000 people. Now it's crazy, and we do a big party the last night. That we have an EDM artist, and we do a big, huge concert in parking lot. Only in Las Vegas could you build a big concert hall in a parking lot. It's like unbelievable. But we announce it's a learning summit. It's not a sales and marketing summit, and I really like that. And you have it's completely super diverse, by the way, except there's too many. The only good thing about being a female at this conference is you don't have to wait in line for the bathroom. And every time I pass them in and I'm saying, sorry, I'm going straight to the bathroom. So that's the only good thing. But we're still striving. We have a whole series this year. We have a speakers forum that we're working actively to have more females speak. So I'm excited about that, and more diversity just in general from that. But the way that I work on those new tools, my customers get to absorb them almost at the same time for trial. But generally what happens in government, less so in the education space, but in government, in most places, anytime you use a new technology that's mission critical, it has to go through a security and compliance regime or audit of some type. So what we have to do is start early and prioritize the type of tools and services that we really want to go through that. So in government, you always have extra layers, of course. There's always extra hurdles to get to where you need to be. And then we just do the same introductions. We're going to have about 6,000 people this year coming from public sector, which is pretty good because a lot of times government people don't want to come to Las Vegas. But now they've embraced it because they know it's a learning conference. So it's really the same type of infusion. We have an inside sales team, and we do sort of outbound calling with campaigns and look at things that we really could support our customers on. And the new things they're really interested in are the artificial intelligence, machine learning, new tools like recognition and Rec and Poly and things like that. So thank you for asking. It was a great question, by the way.
And we do have time for one more question. We have someone waiting over here to your left.
Hi, my name is Erica. I'm a staff member here on campus. I'm an analyst. And I just had more of a personal question about managing your work-life balance.
What's that?
Yeah, and just starting out maybe in your career as a mother with young children. I talk to a lot of other moms. The studies say that we disproportionately do more at home, and just how you were able to manage running your house and also being successful at work.
Well, I have two sons that are grown now, thank goodness, and they're sane and they're working, and I'm happy about that. But I tell my team all the time, I wasn't a really good example of that, and I think you make choices, and at certain points in time in your life, I don't know that there's actually I hear people talk a lot about work-life balance, but I've always just blended my work and my life together. Now, I will tell you, though, I never missed my son anything that was important. I look back today, and I don't know really how I did it, but I never missed an important event. I always supported field trips. I was the mom that they always wanted to be with. I had treats. Everybody was at our house all the time. I worked at Microsoft. We had every Xbox thing possible. And I set it up that way, sort of intentionally, that everybody wanted to come to my house. Like it was sort of a staged. If everybody wanted to be at my house, and I could watch everybody, if that makes sense. Like I could have my hands on everybody. But I think, at points in time are different, and every person, both male and female, has to make that decision. We just recently at Amazon changed our leave policy for having, babies or adopting, and it's very generous now, and I've loved that. And I saw immediately a lot more women become pregnant or adopt. And I thought it was great. And I will tell you, my women, I don't even feel like they miss a beat. Like they plan. So I think if you're going to take off, it's about planning appropriately and have everything staged and ready if you want to come back, and also having those open conversations with your manager. I'm super flexible with people. I basically tell my team, all my team, because I think men do as much as women today in the U.S. That's not the case at all around the world. In many places, women still do everything. And here it's a little bit more diverse than that, But I tell people, do what you have to do, put your family first, but you got to get your job done. That's sort of how I tell people. Like, you got to get your job done. I really don't care how you get it done, but you shouldn't be missing important family events. So it's choices. It is choices. I don't know that you can have everything all at once. I really don't. I work a lot. I do today. And if I had young children, I don't know how it would go over. But I think you can have a lot today in tech because of the job, kind of the types of jobs. I think if women are in coding and development, they can have jobs where they work from home and have flexibility. But I would say it's up to you to figure that out. But I do laugh and tell my team I'm not the best example of all that all the time. But my boys will tell me, I ask them, is there things I should have done differently? And they say, no, Mom, we're so proud and we learned so many things. But they'll say, where'd you get your work muscle? They will oftentimes, they want to know, like, how do you do what you do? And I'm like, well, you build this up over time. It doesn't happen overnight. But the best thing for females, I've had a lot of women come to me and say, I just can't do this anymore. And I'm like, let's talk about it. And I always want to have the discussion. And at some point in time, sometimes people just have to say, I got to have a break. And that's okay too. And what I tell the women or men, if they come to me and say that, the best advice I give them is, look, only you know what's going on in your life, and only you can make the right decisions for yourself. But if you believe at any point in time that you may want to return, try to stay current in some way while you're off. Like, stay active. Don't sort of just get in a turtle shell. Because for women, the big thing I worry about is if they do want to come back, then they feel like they've waited so long that they're not current. So, like, if you feel like you have to really take a break because of your life situation, I just say keep your network alive. Try not to just completely stop, because you never know when you might want to come back. So,
Well, thank you so much. We're actually, unfortunately, out of time, but thank you both so much for your time and your insight. It's a very powerful session, so thank you so much again.
thank you guys.
Wonderful.